The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast featuring Jeff Upson and Eric Knopsnyder. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
What's going on, wrestling fans? You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Upson, joined as always by my co-host, Eric Knopsnyder. Eric, how's it going?
Great. Had a wonderful time at Fargo, Jeff, and looking to recap some of that action and let everyone know what's going on.
Yeah, well, I hope if you didn't notice, we were out in Fargo. We tried to give you the best coverage we could. I think we did a pretty good job, Eric. We were pumping out video recaps, articles, interviews. I mean, we were working our tails off. We were.
I hope the people enjoyed it. Seemed to get a good response on social media and the number of views we got on everything. So really enjoyed it, and seems like everyone else did as well.
Well, we got a great show planned for you, so buckle in for the next hour or so. We're going to have John Strittmatter. No, not Jody Strittmatter. His brother, John, older brother, John Strittmatter, is going to be coming on here. And also we're going to hear from Josh Stillings from Pennridge, the rising senior. He's going to release his top 4 schools in his college decision. So pretty cool stuff that we got coming on. But as you said, Eric, the Fargo tournament, that was the first time you and I were both at the Fargo Dome covering Fargo. What were your thoughts?
It was incredible. I mean, it was everything I expected it to be, and I had pretty high expectations going in. Just phenomenal wrestling. I mean, 30 mats anywhere you looked, just studs everywhere, and great matchups. Whether you're looking at the second round or the semifinals or the finals, just phenomenal wrestling everywhere.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because we both walked into the Fargo Dome, and I think about after an hour, you and I both looked at each other and said, man, I wish I would have competed here, because it just looked like so much. I mean, just looked like a lot of fun.
It did. And some of what we'll get into later is why aren't some guys going there? So it makes you wonder.
Well, for you, Eric, it's easy. I mean, was freestyle even around when you were wrestling?
No, it was still, just wrestling on the ground back then.
That's what I thought.
No mats.
I don't have an excuse. Well, I mean, in central Pennsylvania, freestyle wasn't huge when I was wrestling, but I mean, I did do some summer freestyle wrestling, and I actually enjoyed freestyle because I was terrible on bottom, so it was just nice because they just stand us right back up. But yeah, I thought overall, I mean, it was, I think, a little overwhelming at first when we walked in. We're like, wow, how are we going to cover, two of us just cover all of this, especially with the Pennsylvania wrestlers coming up in cadets, because there was this, I mean, it seemed like every 2 seconds there was a new one on the mat. So it was a little tough, but I think once we got into our groove, we were able to do a pretty good job.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, as you said, but nobody feels bad for us getting to go watch all that great wrestling. So
yeah, on our vacation time, right? So
yeah, we're kind of sick like that.
They're like, I had some friends. They're like, oh, you took a vacation week. Where'd you go? I'm like, I went to Fargo. Like non-wrestling fans are like, what? What do you mean? Like, what about the Outer Banks? I'm like, no, Fargo, North Dakota wrestling. It's like, oh, okay. Well, is it cool? I'm like, well, we didn't actually really get to see Fargo. We took 8 Uber rides, all very interesting in their own right. To and from. We actually stayed in an Airbnb, and it's interesting enough. There was a couple that stayed in the basement of the Airbnb we were at. Their son was wrestling. They're from Washington State, and their son was competing in Fargo. So they were below us, and we had the main floor. Very interesting, Eric.
Yeah, it was a great time. I mean, I got the same thing when I came back. They're like, oh, how was Fargo? I'm like, I was in a dome for like 12 hours a day.
And I'm just fortunate that you were able to stick it out and last the entire time, because, I mean, let's be honest, Eric. There was a moment there where I thought maybe you were going to be put in the hospital.
Well, I didn't get injured on this trip, which is more than we can say for France.
Yeah, that's true. But remember what happened here. So I'm gonna let the fans know how this went down. When so we're sitting mat side, right? We're sitting mat side. I think Eric's taking video. Yeah, you're taking video, and,
yes.
And I'm shooting the camera, right? And I forget who we were watching, right? Probably, I think it was Mike Kistler actually from Northampton. But we're sitting there. And, you know, out of the corner of my eye, I see, you know, no one other than Ben Askern. Ben Askern, obviously, everyone should know who he is. If not, Google him. You'll find out very quickly who he is. But so we're sitting there, and Ben Askern sitting there next to us, and one of the floor workers comes up to him and says, "Excuse me, sir, you're going to have to move. You can't sit there." And he looked at, and so we had green wristbands on our wrists that just indicated that we were media and that we were allowed to be on the floor next to the mat. Ben Askern did not have a green wristband, obviously, because he's a coach, right? And they were trying to clear the floor. So there's this young kid, couldn't have been more than 15, comes up to him, probably has no idea who he was. In fact, I did talk to him afterwards, and he did not know who he was. But he said, you know, sir, you gotta move. We can't be sitting here. So he looks at Eric in the most just obnoxious way. He looks at Eric and says, "Well, what if I just pull out my iPhone? What if I pull out an iPhone? Then can I sit here?" And Eric looks at him like, "Really, dude?" And I'm just thinking, like, oh my God, Ben Askern's going to beat the crap out of Eric. Like, he's going to just submit him right here.
I did nothing to bring this on. And to be fair, I mean, people that don't understand, an iPhone is like the Swiss tool or Swiss Army knife of journalism these days. I mean, you can do everything on it. You can tweet, you can text, you can shoot video, obviously. You can upload it. You can do everything you need to do on your iPhone. So while the point was taken that, okay, I don't really look like a professional journalist there with an iPhone, I really was working, and I really was, you know, hopefully putting out some good stuff. So, yeah, I was a little offended by it, but Jeff wouldn't let me forget it for the rest of the trip.
No, not at all. Absolutely not. And it's funny because I went up to that kid after. I was like, "Do you realize who you just told to move?" And he was like, "No, like I don't." I was like, "Have you ever heard of like Ben Askern?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, Funky, the guy with the hair." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the guy you just told to move." And I was like, I gave him props. I was like, "Wow, good job, man! Like you just told Ben Askern to move, and he did." So
well, and the kid was, give him credit too, because he came right back when Ben Askern said that. What if I get out an iPhone? He's like, "No, but if you get a green wristband, you can." He
did. That was quick.
I mean, he was right on it.
On his feet, he was quick. Yeah, he was like, "No, but if you get a green wristband," he's like, "Oh, okay, touche." So I thought that was kind of funny, Eric. So other than that, you were pretty safe. I was going to protect you. I mean, not that
I was just happy I made it through a trip without getting injured.
That's true. That's very true. Well, we can't say the same about Pennsylvania. There was some. I mean, we had some injuries, right? Just maybe some bruised egos, but overall, thoughts on Pennsylvania's performance, Eric?
Well, I mean, obviously Carter Starocci is the one really bright spot. Great showing out of him, both freestyle and Greco. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to stick around for Greco, or weren't able to stick around for Greco. But you know, he did a great job out there. Looked fantastic. Trent Hidley looked good. Ran into a stud in Aaron Brooks in the finals. Some of the other guys, you know, I'm sure we would have liked to have gotten more. And again, we'll get into it a little bit later. You know, why aren't we getting some of our best guys out there, and why aren't we getting as many All-Americans and other things as a state like Illinois?
Yeah, Eric, for sure. And, you know, obviously us being, you know, a part of PA Power, we enjoy seeing success at all levels, whether that's freestyle, Greco, or folk style. So definitely the expectations high. Carter Starocci, my gosh, can you say any? I mean, he was spot on all tournament. He never looked like in a bad position. He wrestled really, really tough. I was very impressed with how he just got to his offense quick, and he looked really comfortable. Like he didn't look razzled at all. Even in the finals, under the big lights on the elevated stage on the mat, you know, he just looked like it was another tournament.
No, and I heard I was just listening to another podcast and heard him getting some national attention, you know, that really opened people's eyes with the performance out there. So great to see out of Carter, great kid, and obviously a great wrestler as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I was very impressed with him and the way he was able to compete. We knew going into that he was going to be a favorite there. But for him to really just dominate the competition like he did was pretty impressive for him. But some other guys that I thought would, you know, that stuck out to me, because we always said beforehand, before we left the Fargo, we said there's always someone that's going to surprise us, right? and not that it was a huge surprise because he was a Fargo All-American twice before, but Miles Lee. I mean, who would have had him in the finals against Jake Warner?
Yeah, and I don't know, I hope everyone that is listening was able to get a chance to see some of the stuff we did out there. And the Miles Lee, talking to him on video was one of my favorite things, because just the smile, that megawatt smile that he has, and just the excitement that he had going into that final. The final didn't work out the way he wanted, but you know what? The run he made to get there, and just the enthusiasm that he brings was just infectious. You couldn't help but root for the kid.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you there, Eric. I mean, he was just. I think a lot of people, realized how special he really was, especially in the finals when they announced and they said Miles Lee, who's only been wrestling for 3 years, and I remember Nomad from Flow came up. He's like, "What do they mean by 3 years?" I'm like, "They mean 3 years." So, pretty cool stuff from him. So. Overall, so we'll start with cadet because that's where we started out with the competition. So in cadets freestyle, Pennsylvania had 51 wrestlers competing. We had 11 All-Americans, including one champion, who we just mentioned, and that's Starocci. So overall, Pennsylvania finished with 49 team points, which was third in the team standings. 49, remember that. Illinois was first with 84 points. So not even really close. I mean, it's not like they were neck and neck. Illinois was the champion with 84 points. Pennsylvania 49 in third. So we look at some of the All-Americans that we had. Sheldon Seymour from Troy. He was third at 94 pounds. You had Ryan Miller. He's a Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania native. He goes to Blair. He finished fourth at 106. Marcus Branford he's from Wilson Area High School. He finished seventh at 120 pounds. Carter Tuttle from Wyoming Seminary. He finished seventh at 132 pounds. And Eric, that's a guy that you and I both were really high on. And he just, Carson Manville is just unbelievable. He was the OW tournament, just destroyed the competition. But Carter, he wrestled tough. That was a huge bracket, that 132 bracket.
Yeah, he did. I was really impressed. I don't get to see some of the prep school guys that much, and so it was a great opportunity to see Carter Tuttle and get to know him a little bit, talked with him a couple of times, and was really impressed with his abilities out there.
And he's a very mature kid too. He was very well spoken when we talked to him. Pretty good head on his shoulders for him. So I'm sure Scott Green is excited about getting him in the lineup for Wyoming Seminary. At 138 pounds, Michael Kistler from Northampton finishes fourth. One of the more impressive performances, I thought, was Michael Kistler. Not a guy that necessarily has a lot of state prowess, if you will, but he competes for the Northampton Concrete Kids. He's battle tested, if you will. But he came out and really shined in Fargo. I was pleasantly surprised to see him finish in the top 4 for him, which was a great performance. Then you look at 145 pounds, Luca Frenzy, the Quakertown, Pennsylvania native. He goes to Bethlehem Catholic High School. We saw him. He was in and out of the lineup. Obviously, if you wrestle for Becca, you're always competing for a starting spot. But he finishes sixth at 145 pounds. Carter Starocci, he was first at 152 pounds, and just really, really impressive, as we said. He wasn't the only medalist there at 152 pounds. Aurelius Dunbar from Greencastle, he goes to Mercersburg Academy. He finishes seventh. And then Garrett Nyhouse, who we were pretty excited to see up at 170 pounds. And how big did he look, Eric? Yeah,
he did not look like he was small at all at 170. Definitely filling out as he moves into his sophomore year.
Yeah, his legs looked like tree trunks. They were huge. He looked really big, and he looked good in his Fargo trip. And he finishes fourth at 170 pounds. He actually forfeited the third place match there. 182 pounds. This is a guy that you sort of asked me, you're like, where did he come from? Darian Roberts. He's a very talented wrestler who's at Wyoming Seminary. He was at East Stroudsburg North his freshman season. And Darian battled all the way back to third. He lost pretty early on, I believe.
Yeah, and that's the shame of it, is sometimes we concentrate so much on the upper bracket that we lose track a little bit of what's going on in the Consi bracket, especially in a tournament that big. There's so much going on that it's not always easy to see everybody. So, yeah, didn't get to see too much of him out there. But, yeah, what a job coming back to finish third.
Yeah, and it's obviously tough because those guys are wrestling really quick, one after another, especially when they're in the Consi rounds. I mean, they're wrestling – maybe 20, 30 minutes between each match. I mean, it's pretty fast. So Darian Roberts, he comes all the way back to finish third in freestyle. He actually finished third in Greco as well. At 220 pounds, Hunter Katka, the Sun Valley wrestler, finishes sixth at 220 pounds. And then Kobe Whitehill from Brookville, he finishes seventh. He was a double All-American, cadet All-American from Brookville. So overall, pretty impressed with these young guys. 11 All-Americans. Obviously, we'd like to have more, but overall, Eric, what do you think?
Again, like you said, I mean, those 11, great showings out of them. I'm sure a couple of them would have liked to have been a few spots higher on the podium, but you're always going to have that. A guy like Colby Whitehill, I thought, really impressed me, able to go out there and, as you said, get double All-American honors for a guy who really, wasn't completely a starter there in that Brookville lineup. Great showing there. Now, again, what we need to figure out is how can we get more than 11 All-Americans? For a state like Pennsylvania, with the tradition and the guys that we have in this state, we shouldn't be losing by almost 40 points to Illinois. Yeah. We should be more competitive there. Yeah. And that's the depth issue. And that's what people always talk about with Pennsylvania is, okay, maybe at some weights, your top guy can beat our top guy, but our top six guys, could place second in your state. So our depth is where we really shine most of the time, and that's not coming through at Fargo.
So, and Eric, and we're going to talk a lot more about this in the coming moments, but so I did a 7-year average. So I took all the finishes from Pennsylvania in Fargo over the last 7 years, from 2010 to 2017. So what I found was in cadets in freestyle, the average All-American number of All-Americans for Pennsylvania over 7 years was 11. So we finished just right on average. Last year, we had 6 cadet All-Americans. 2015 and 14, we had 13. 2012 and 2011, we had 14. And 2010, we had 8. So, but the one thing that I looked at was also the number of wrestlers entered. Now, the average number of wrestlers entered for the cadet freestyle was 50, and we had 51 this year. In 2016, we had 43, but you look at 2015, we had 60. So, obviously 9 more wrestlers. That's gonna help you out. It's gonna increase your chances of getting that other medalist.
Yeah, and Jeff, by the way, great job putting this together. I mean, it's obvious that you put some time into this to go back and look this up and see everything and crunch all the numbers. And so, yeah, it really reads, as you said, as we're almost exactly an average year with 11 cadet freestyle All-Americans out of 51 wrestlers, which is just one over the average. Now, both of those are skewed a little bit by 2016, though, because that was a really poor showing with only 43 guys going out and only 6 medalists.
Yeah,
so that brings down both of those averages.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at 2016 and 2010, and I am going to post this when we post the podcast, you guys will be able to see this spreadsheet here. 2010 and 2016 really skewed it because we only had 6 and 8 respectively, 43 and 47 participants. But you look at in 2011, we sent 42, the lowest number of wrestlers we sent in the 7 years. 42, we had 14 All-Americans. I mean, so. People are going to say, well, it depends. What 42 or what 60 wrestlers are you sending out? Are you sending out, state qualifier, regional qualifiers, or are you sending out state champions and state medalists? It's obviously, quality over quantity. But if you look in 2011, 42, 14 came away with medals. So that's obviously impressive in that sense. Doing more with less, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a situation where we're bereft of talent. I mean, if we send our top guys out there, even if they're not super experienced in freestyle, you get them in camp for a couple of weeks, you have them, working on it a little bit, I still think we come away with more than 11 medalists. And this isn't to belittle anyone that went and didn't medal, but I think we all know that there are a lot of big names out there that didn't go to Fargo.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. And again, we're gonna dive real deep into this in a little bit here. So let's continue. I'll continue on with some of the recapping that we had in Cadet Greco Roman out in Fargo, in which we were not there. Unfortunately, we had jobs to come back to and things to do. But we had 41 wrestlers competing in cadets and Greco-Roman. And we had 11 All-Americans, so the same amount as we had in freestyle, and we had one champion. Again, that was Starocci from Erie Cathedral Prep. So he was able to come away with a double cadet national champion. Very impressive for that young man. So 94 pounds, Sheldon Seymour finishes third in Greco. We had Chris Kim from Germantown Academy. He finishes seventh at 106 pounds. Then we go to 126. We had two wrestlers here. One finished fifth. That's Josh Jones from Saucon Valley. He defeats Ed Scott from DuBois in that fifth place match. So we had two medalists there. And then 138, Michael Kistler. Again, he's on the podium. He finishes fifth in Greco. Carter Tuttle, he finishes eighth. That's his second double All-American finish. 160. So Carter actually moved up from 152 to 160 for Greco-Roman, and there was no issues for him. He still did well. He finishes first at 160 pounds. Angel Garcia, he's a guy out of Philadelphia, Marina Bruschetta Academy. He finishes third at 160. Very impressed with the way he wrestled. And Darren Roberts, again, we talked about him, 182 pounds. He finishes third there, so third in both freestyle and Greco. Hunter Katka, again, he finishes seventh at 220, and Kobe Whitehill, again, seventh at 285. So we had 7 double All-Americans, cadet double All-Americans, which is that's a pretty good number, I would say.
It is, and I can't complain too much. If you take 51 in freestyle, having 41 there for Greco isn't bad, because there are a couple guys that did just go Greco only, but for the most part, freestyle, I think we can all say, is more popular than Greco. So to only have 10 fewer guys in Greco, I don't think is a bad thing. Now, we want to get both numbers up, obviously, and we want to get both numbers up as far as All-Americans and champions go.
So looking at the numbers, speaking of being in both styles, so Pennsylvania finishes third with 44 points. So third in freestyle, third in cadet or in Greco-Roman. Illinois was first with 89 points. So Illinois wins cadet Greco-Roman 89 points, and they win cadet freestyle with 84 points. So obviously those guys from Illinois or those cadets are doing something right, just destroying the competition.
Not just cadets, I mean juniors as well.
Oh, right.
Illinois, give them credit. They do a great job of, first of all, getting people interested in freestyle and Greco, getting them to Fargo, and getting them to do well.
Yeah, and we're gonna pose that question here in a second of why that is. So if we move up to juniors, so juniors in freestyle, Pennsylvania had 43 wrestlers competing. 8 were All-Americans. We had 0 champions. Overall, Pennsylvania finishes 5th. They scored 32 points in junior freestyle. Illinois was first again with 82 points. So 32 to 82 there. We had 8 All-Americans, 0 champions. But there were some bright spots. And as you talked about, Trent Hidley went unscored upon until the finals, and then just sort of literally ran into. He ran Aaron Brooks off the mat and ended up getting tossed, and that really took the wind out of his sails.
Yeah, Aaron Brooks, very good. Not taking anything away from him. I mean, he looked fantastic. I asked Trent and I asked Coach Brian Pearsall both, do you think maybe you should have tried to rein it in a little bit instead of just going out there and trying to push him around as he did so well with everybody else in the tournament? Do you think you should have tried to go a little bit slower, a little bit more deliberate? And they both said, hey, look, that's his style. That's who he is. We've just got to do things better on our end. We can't tailor it to the guy that he's wrestling. And you have to respect that. I'm not sure, how it might have played out differently. But again, you have to respect the fact that they're saying, hey, this is what we do, and we need to concentrate on what we do.
The quote was actually, Eric, he's a peacock. You got to let him fly. And for any of you out there who are Will Ferrell fans, that is a other guy's movie quote. And it's one of the best movies there is, especially because I'm a police officer and I try to basically be Will Ferrell in that movie as a police officer, right? So, so Trent Hidley is a peacock, and you got to let him fly. So, juniors, I would say Trent was definitely the bright spot there. But we had some other All-Americans. At 113 pounds, Nick Onia from Pottsville. This is a guy who was a state qualifier. He finishes ahead of a state champion in Doug Zapp. Nick finishes 8th at 113 pounds. And then Gabe Miller from Pequay Valley. This guy, he went, I believe, 1-2 last year in cadets. This guy shows up in juniors and finishes 6th. And I just checked Flo's national rankings they came out with recently, and Gabe Miller has broken into those rankings. And my gosh, what a performance for him. He finishes 3rd in the state this year, and he was a state semifinalist. Very, very talented guy. But really, I mean, just turned it on, and he beat a couple nationally ranked guys along the way. So he had a heck of a tournament.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I know we're going to talk about it later, but for the people that say that, oh, well, Fargo isn't as big a deal as it used to be in terms of getting the national attention, tell it to a guy like that who is breaking into the national rankings now. Well,
I think clearly this is, I mean, just because there's more nationally renowned tournaments other than Fargo doesn't, take away the importance of Fargo. But again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. 138 pounds, Jack Davis from Wyoming Seminary. He finishes 7th at 138 pounds. 145, Sammy Sasso in a really grueling match. That these two, Sammy Sasso and Justin McCoy, both Pennsylvania state champions in 2017. At the end of that match, Eric, do you remember this? They could barely stand up. Like they were barely. They wanted to say thank you and good job to each other, and neither one of them could catch their breath.
Well, Justin McCoy is from my area, and I talked to him out there, and I actually ran into him already this week and talked to him. And he was not using this as an excuse at all, but part of the reason he could barely stand up was he was already banged up. His back was a little injured, and then he tried a desperation throw at the end, and you can see it on the video that I shot that his ankle rolls over. And so, yeah, he was pretty much a walking wounded at that point that, standing up was kind of a struggle for him. But, yeah, it was an interesting match seeing those two go at it, because we had seen them a week earlier at Clarion working out together, practicing moves on one another, drilling, all this stuff, and now they're battling for a spot on the podium.
Yeah, and Sammy Sasso, I mean, what more can you say about his semifinals match with Anthony Artolona from Florida? Loses 10-10, but here's a caveat. They will be wrestling at Who's Number One in October. So, Eric, I think we're going to have to make another trip out to the Snake Pit.
Oh, absolutely. That was a fantastic match.
Yes, it was.
It was a heartbreaker on the Pennsylvania end. And I'm sure, talk about things you could have done differently. I'm sure Sammy has a lot of things in his head that he could have done differently. And then he had that situation where you talked about earlier, where you've only got 20 minutes to bounce back from a semifinal loss. He was seconds from being in the finals, it looked like, because he was up, was it 10-2 at one point, I think, and ended up losing 10-10. It was something like that. And so he goes heartbreaking from that to, okay, now you got to wrestle again 20 minutes later. Yeah. And I talked to him about it. He didn't blame it on that at all. Just said, hey, I didn't come out ready to go. And what happens in Fargo is if you come out and you're not ready to go, you're probably going to get beaten. And he did, but he was able to bounce back the next day and beat Justin McCoy.
Yeah, I mean, when you're wrestling Brayton Lee from Indiana in that consolation semifinals, yeah, you're going to have, after a 10-10 heartbreaker to the returning Fargo national champion in Anthony Artolona. And for those who don't remember, Artolona, he actually beat Jared Verklieren last year in the Fargo finals and juniors. This was somewhat of an upset considering Jared was ranked as high as number 1 in the nation. But so Sasso has him on the ropes, and then just, he lets him come back a little bit. But as you said, Sammy bounced back. He finishes strong. He beats Justin McCoy, two just very, very good representations of Pennsylvania. And another side note, Sammy Sasso finishes ahead of Brock Hardy from Utah, who he had wrestled twice in the cadet finals the last 2 years. He lost to him last year and beat him the year prior. So he does finish higher than him.
that weight was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
the amount of talent there was just insane.
We're going to look back in 5-6 years, and we're going to be like, wow, remember when all those guys were in the same bracket? Caden Gefeller, Brayton Lee, Alex Lloyd, Justin McCoy, Sam. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was a good one, right? So,
yeah, you're going to see a lot of college All-Americans coming out of that weight class.
Yes, you are. So 170, we had Trent Hidley, who finished second. He actually got teched by Aaron Brooks from Hagerstown, Maryland, who actually was going to wrestle 182 pounds to Fargo, but he was like, I'm going to drop down to 170. And he just, unfortunately for Trent, as you said, I mean, he came out like he normally does, and Aaron Brooks was ready for it. I mean, I give him credit. He wrestled Trent tough. I mean, there was a little bit of Trent sort of got poked in the eye it was not intentional whatsoever, but he looked like poked in the eye in the first 10 seconds. And you could tell when he came over to the side, it was bothering him. He couldn't see. It just seemed like it was bothering him. And that was right before he got launched for that 4. And he couldn't come back from that.
No, and he did. I mean, he gave up 3 4s in the match, which was just stunning to see because, as you said, nobody had scored a point on him the whole tournament. So I really thought, okay, is he going to get another tech here and just completely dominate this tournament? And instead it went the other way. I mean, Aaron Brooks, was phenomenal. As you said, he got the throw there. I think he hit him in a double leg for 4. And then I'm not sure exactly how the other 4 came about to end it, but I do remember there were 3 4s in there.
Yeah, there's 3 4s, and Trent just wasn't able to come back from that. Maybe that's I'm just saying, it's throwing this out there, Flo, but Ryan Holmes, maybe we need to have this as a rematch too. I don't know. It wasn't as close as the Sasso Arlono match, but I think switching to folk style may be a little bit different. So 195 pounds. Pennsylvania had 2 All-Americans here. Miles Lee, as we said, from South Philadelphia. He finishes second. He loses to Jake Warner, who's nothing but a UWW world bronze medalist. So he's pretty good. He's going to Iowa next year. And Jake Woodley from North Allegheny, he finishes 4th. This is his 4th straight All-American honors in Fargo. I mean, just a guy who really came on to the scene under the radar back in when he came out to Fargo this first time. He comes away with his 4th finish, All-American finish in Fargo. He lost to Jake Warner in the semifinals, 10-0. This was a rematch of the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic between those two at 195 pounds. Woodley, again, drops to Warner. Warner's really, really good because, as we've seen, he just destroyed everybody, including Miles Lee in the finals there. So Woodley falls to 4th place. He actually beat Brandon Whitman from Michigan in the quarterfinals, and then he loses to him in the 3rd and 4th place match. Those two just went back and forth. But overall, Pennsylvania comes away with 2 All-Americans here.
Well, and I want to give full credit to Jake Woodley. We don't get many graduating seniors that go back and wrestle. Miles Lee did as well. But as you said, Jake Woodley already out in Oklahoma, really made it would have been easy to say, okay, I've already placed there. It's not a big deal. I'm moving on to college now. Not going to worry about it. But I give him full credit for saying, hey, I want to go out there. I want to try to win the big stop sign and be a national champion. And he put in the effort to do it. Didn't work out the way he wanted to, but I'd love to see more guys doing this.
Yeah, I agree with Eric 100%. And, we do not see that a whole lot. And when I talked to him before the tournament, I said, what, you're in Oklahoma already. Why are you going to Fargo? And he's like, well, because I haven't won it. And I thought that was pretty impressive just to hear him say that because he's already at Oklahoma. He's already committed to a Division I college. He didn't have to go there, but neither did Jacob Warner. He was at Iowa already.
True. But again, yeah, I mean, we're obviously focusing on the Pennsylvania end and what we can do to get more of those guys there.
No, sure. And I agree. I mean, it seems like with Illinois, it's, maybe it's just a case of, well, yeah, you're expected to. So again, we're getting closer to the time when we can really.
Can you tell we're chomping at the bit to get to this discussion?
We're getting there, right? So if we look at the 7-year average, so obviously I'm a big numbers guy. So we look at the freestyle All-Americans and juniors. The average over 7 years was 7. And in 2017, we had 8. So if you look at that, we had 43 wrestlers competing. Last year in 2016, we had 12 with 49 competing. So 12 was the highest in the 7 years. We also had 12 in 2014. The lowest number, 2011, we had a whopping 3. So 2010, we had 4. 11, we had 3. 12, we had 8. 13 was 6. So then it jumped all the way up. It doubled to 12 and 14. And now we're back down to 8 in 2017. The highest number of wrestlers that ever in the last 7 years that competed in Fargo in juniors was 54, and that was in 2015. Again, we had 43 in 2017, which was the second lowest. We had 42 going in 2010. So the second lowest number of wrestlers competing in the junior division.
All I can say is it's a good thing we didn't have this podcast back in 2010 and 11.
Yeah,
we think the sky is falling now. Can you imagine what would have been like with 3 All-Americans?
Jump off the ship. It's sinking. Oh, my gosh. Let's move to Ohio. Ohio Power Wrestling. Here we come. No, yeah, it's no, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying the sky is falling.
I know, but look at look at your Facebook page.
Well, yeah, you're really chomping at the bit here now, aren't you, Eric? Yeah. So, okay, so we'll finish recapping the rest of it before we get into it. Junior Greco-Roman. Again, we had 8 All-Americans, 0 champions. So we had 8 and 8 in both freestyle and Greco-Roman. We were 8th in the team. Pennsylvania finishes 8th as a team with 22 points. I bet you can't answer this question. Who finishes first?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Illinois.
Illinois with 106 points. So not only are these guys just whooping us in freestyle, they're also doing it in Greco. So I will mention just some of the numbers here for our junior Greco. We had 7 All-Americans, and 8 All-Americans in 2017. The average is 5 over 7 years. So we are doing better. We had 31 wrestlers competing in junior Greco-Roman. That is one of the higher numbers. The highest was 35, and that was last year. 40 in 2015. So, and that year we only finished with 5 All-Americans. So if you look at the average over 7 years, we are above the 7-year average with 7. So not I can't say a whole lot bad about that.
No, and I mean, Pennsylvania is not. We're known for a lot of things. Greco isn't our strong suit.
No, it's not. But who's to say it shouldn't be? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm asking for too much, but
doesn't seem to be a problem for Illinois to be good at both.
Yeah, that's a fact. So let's shift gears to women's cadet women's, who we were able to see what they were out there when we were there still. The cadet women's, they had 3 All-Americans. 9 wrestlers went out there. So we had 9 wrestlers competing. 3 of them came away with All-American finishes. And PA finished 11th as a team with 20 points. California was first with 102 points. Yeah, they're pretty good in California, the women's wrestling.
They are, and I mean, not to use it as an excuse, but we don't have a high school system for girls. And that's going to continue to hurt us until we do. We're not going to be able to compete with the states that do, the Californias, the Hawaiis, I believe Washington. The ones who have a separate system for girls are going to be good at it because they're going to have a lot more dedicated girls that are going out there and competing. It's much tougher when you ask a girl to say, okay, yeah, wrestle on your boys' high school team all season long and then go compete against the girls later. Not many are going to stick it out.
No, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, we're seeing that that sort of trend happen here in Pennsylvania. But I will say, I think it is getting a little bit better. Our 3 All-Americans, Caitlin Walker, who's from Hatboro, Pennsylvania. She's going to Wyoming Seminary next season for the new inaugural women's wrestling program there that Scott Green is taking hold of there. I just can't say enough about that. Caitlin finishes 4th at 94 pounds. She was a Pan-American champion this year. Kayla Kerr from York, Pennsylvania, out of Spring Grove. She finishes 4th at 100 pounds. And then if we move up to 144 pounds, Jillian Bruno from East Stroudsburg, she finishes 5th at 144 pounds. We got to see her wrestle several times, and she's impressive throughout the tournament. So overall, 3 All-Americans for Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and out of 9 contestants, that's really not too bad. You can't complain about that. Honestly, if you're looking at it from a number standpoint, I think the girls did better than the guys did in terms of how they did for the people that are there.
Right, the percentage of wrestlers that were there. So I did this 7-year average for all styles and all years and all classes. So the women's cadets, the average All-Americans over 7 years was 3, and we finished with 3. The number of wrestlers we sent this year was 9. The average over 7 years was 5, so we're up a little bit. Last year we had 7 cadets competing, and 4 came away with All-Americans. 6 in 2015, 4 All-Americans. So it's interesting because we send 2 more or 3 more than we have in the years past, but we come away with 1 less. But there's also 2 goose eggs in there, 2 zeros, where 2013 and 2010 we had 0 cadet wrestlers competing in girls. So those obviously throw the numbers down a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely throws it off. Like I said, I'm sure there are people out there that know a lot more about the women's side of it than I do, but I don't think this was a bad showing in any way. Again, every tournament you'd like to get more kids on the podium, but I think that it was a pretty good showing by the women.
Yeah, I agree, Eric. And if we move up to juniors, we had a champion here, Valerie Baker from Benton, Pennsylvania. This is a girl who's been around for a long time. She is no stranger to success in Fargo. She's competed here, done well before. And Val comes away with the championship title at 106 pounds, and she beat Michaela Campbell from Ohio in the finals 11-11. That was a barn burner match. I don't know if you went back and watched it, Eric, but very good match. Val wrestled there. They've had some history. They've wrestled before in the past. But Valerie comes away with the championship title at 106 pounds, and she's a girl that, if there's going to be a girl to make the state tournament, she's going to be close to doing that. She was a regional qualifier last year. She's pretty tough. She can hang with the guys.
Yeah, I remember seeing her wrestle at Powerade last year, and she really opened my eyes because she faced some pretty good competition there, and she was right with them. I came away very impressed by what I saw from her.
And then we have the Walker sisters, both who are going to be at Wyoming Seminary next year. Caitlin, who competed at 100 pounds, she finishes 6th at 100 pounds, so she was a medalist All-American in cadets and juniors. And then her older sister, Amanda, finishes 3rd at 117 pounds. So, again, 3 All-Americans for the women's juniors. And like I said, I'm impressed, especially with Valerie and the Walkers and how they were able to compete out there in Fargo.
Well, and one thing I will say, even though we still don't have a PIAA system, what you brought up, the Wyoming Seminary launching a girls team, that's going to make a big difference. I already heard some talk out there about some really good girls that were transferring to Wyoming Seminary from other states to go there and wrestle. So I expect those numbers to definitely jump up simply because of the Wyoming Seminary program.
Yeah, and it can only make Pennsylvania wrestling that much better, and getting those girls involved that may not be competing as much as they have been in other states, and just having that excitement around it. I'd love to see other programs follow suit throughout the state, and it'd be really, really nice if we can just get some more support for women's wrestling in Pennsylvania. But I think the tide is turning. We're trying to catch up to some other states. We're clearly behind of some of those, California, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, those states, but we're doing better.
Yeah, we are. I agree. And I'm encouraged by I hope that better things are on the horizon for our girls.
All right. You want to do this now, Eric? You've been chomping at the bit for a while now.
Was there something we've been alluding to?
Yeah. So, all right. So let's pose some questions here. So, and I'm just going to throw some numbers your way real quick because, again, I'm a big numbers guy. Jason Bryant's Fargo Almanac, if you haven't had it, get it. It's full of just some tremendous information, very easy to navigate and go through. So Over the last 10 years, we're going to look at Pennsylvania competing in junior freestyle. Over the last 10 years, Pennsylvania has won the junior freestyle national championship twice. They did it in 2009, and they did it last year in 2016. Over the last 10 years, Illinois has won junior Fargo team title 6 times. They did it in 2007, in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and this year in 2017. So what do you make of that, Eric?
Well, I think you, like we like to believe that Pennsylvania is the best state for high school wrestling. And I think that usually we can bear that out in folk style. But obviously we can't make that claim in freestyle from what we're seeing at Fargo. I still think that if we put our best guys out there, we match up. Maybe we don't beat Illinois every year, but I think we're a lot closer to them than 40 points.
Yeah, that's something that we're probably going to discuss is how our guys, what are our guys doing if they're not going out to Fargo. So if we look at cadets, over the last 10 years, Pennsylvania won cadets in Fargo. They won the team title there twice, 2007 and 2012. So we have 2 team championships coming out of Cadet Freestyle, most recent being 2012. Over the last 10 years, Illinois has won the cadet team title a total of 8 times, 09, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row. They're 5-year-in-a-row champions in cadets. That to me is so I don't know if I'm fair, if this is fair or not, but that's to me more troublesome than the juniors, because the cadets, at least in Pennsylvania, they're more apt to go to Fargo because they're younger. They're maybe trying to make a name for themselves. With juniors, I understand if Spencer Lee doesn't go to wrestle in Fargo juniors or some of our bigger, more well-known wrestlers. Okay, but with the cadets, I think that's more. I think we see more cadets. Our numbers are. I mean, it's the numbers don't lie. Mathematically, we send more cadet freestyle wrestlers to Fargo than we do juniors. So that to me is more troublesome than the juniors because Illinois is just, they're just really dominating.
And maybe there's just not the emphasis on freestyle here that there is in Illinois. Maybe we just need to figure out a way to get more people competing throughout the summer in freestyle, getting to the Olympic styles, and putting more of an emphasis on it. I mean, I'm a folk style guy through and through. I wrestled freestyle, wrestled Greco, but folk style was my love, and it still is to a certain extent. But yeah, it hurts to see us getting our butts whipped all the time.
I'm not used to it. I don't like it. We're number one. If you're not first, you're last. That's another Will Ferrell quote right there. Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights. If you ain't first, you're last, Eric, okay? That's the mantra I grew up on. So I was last a whole lot. But so I'm just joking. I won a few things. So when we look at this, so I was randomly sitting down and I'm just thinking in my head. So obviously, what do? We go to social media, right? Because that's what we do in 2017. So I'm
that's
like,
how we solve problems, isn't it?
I'm like, hey, cool. We got a couple thousand followers. I'm gonna pose this question out. We're not Flo. We don't have like 9 million followers, but regardless, we're gonna throw it out there. So we asked on Twitter why Pennsylvania wrestlers did not go to Fargo this season and compete. So I left a poll up there for I think it was 32 hours, something like that. We had 513 people vote. Now, obviously, we have no idea if these are wrestlers, dads, sisters, brothers. They could be dead. I don't know. It doesn't matter. We had 513 people vote. 49% said it was too expensive. 21% said freestyle just ain't my thing. 18% said I want to enjoy my summer, and 12% said I didn't qualify. So if you look at the numbers, you say, okay, well, 49% said it's just way too expensive. And that's something we're going to just talk about. But what's interesting to me is that 21% who said freestyle is just not really my thing. Maybe it's like you said, the emphasis is not placed on those Olympic styles. Pennsylvania through and through, we're folk style focused. Why do we continually to impress upon the national stage at the NCAAs? that's because that emphasis on folk style is very prominent. So what did you make of those numbers, Eric?
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, first and foremost, the things that jumps out at you is a lot of people are saying, look, we just can't afford it. Fargo's a tough place to get to. It's not, even if you can afford to send the wrestler, a lot of parents want to go and see their kid, and they know that it's really expensive to fly to Minneapolis and drive, or to try to find a flight to Fargo, which is a smaller airport. So cost is absolutely a factor for a lot of people, and you have to take that into consideration. The freestyle is not my thing. I get that. I talked to some club coaches who said, look, we've discussed, should we not go to Disney duels because, we want to concentrate more on freestyle? But they said, if we don't take a team, then our guys are just going to go to another club and wrestle for them at the Disney duels. So there are a lot more folk style options out there now during the summer than there used to be. I don't know about when you were wrestling. I know certainly when I was wrestling, there was really no folk style during the summer. If you wanted to wrestle year round, you were going freestyle and Greco just to, if nothing else, just to keep active.
Yeah,
but now there are a lot more folk style competitions that you can get into in the summer months.
Yeah, I mean the folk style that I did, it was like the Lock Haven preseason tournament, Disney duels, and that was basically it. There wasn't, you didn't have Flow Nationals, Virginia Beach. I didn't do a whole lot of. But then again, I worked. I worked at Hershey Park since I was 14, so I was in 8th grade. Every summer, I
didn't know they had Goofy at Hershey Park.
That's hilarious, Eric. That's really, really funny. That's wow. Uncalled for. I'm going to call Ben Askern over and see if he'll steal your iPhone and then knock you out. So I worked every summer. When we went to a team camp. Central Dolphin did. We went up to Cornell. We went to Lock Haven, and then some other guys who maybe were a little bit more dedicated. They would go to maybe a J-Rob camp, or they'd go somewhere else, or Ken Shertow, and they would be able to do a lot of that summer wrestling. So I fell into the camp where I'm thinking, well, I made money. I saved up my money. I bought a car, and I worked my tail off at Hershey Park to sort of make some money, and then I went to training back in the fall area. So I know a lot of kids that continue to do that they say, I just don't have the time. So when we posed this question, when we posted on Twitter, it automatically goes to Facebook, and this just caused a snowball is a light, easy way of putting it. It went.
The first indication of this is whenever my wife, who, as you know, she takes photos, she's around wrestling, but she will tell you at any opportunity that she's not a wrestling fan. But when she said to me, I can't see the results of the poll, but I want to know what it is. You have to tell me what the results are. I was like, okay, maybe there's some interest in this poll. And then I ran into John Strittmatter, and he said the same thing. He's like, I got to know what the results are.
Yeah, so on Facebook, the Facebook was a little bit more interesting because you got people to write paragraphs upon paragraphs of their opinions, and some were maybe a little bit disparaging, a little bit maybe. I don't know. Be a judge for yourself. Go on to PA Power Wrestling. It's actually under Jeff Wrestling Upson.
Just make sure you have a couple hours, because I sat down today and I think I spent between 45 minutes and an hour, and I still didn't make it through all the comments.
Yeah. So what I took out and took away from some of those things, and same with Twitter. I had some wrestlers who I won't name by name, but message or direct message and say, here's some of the reasons why Pennsylvania's failing at freestyle and Greco and Fargo. And, I heard a lot of the same things. It's too expensive. The organization may not be as well, ran as some other things. Qualifiers, maybe, people were complaining about a slew of different things. And same with on Facebook. The complaints were, again, I think there was over 300 comments on this thread. So, again, sit down, binge watch a show while you're reading this or something. But the complaints have been the hotel quality. I heard stories of people finding, cockroaches, maybe drug deals going on at the hotel, driving in a bus. So Pennsylvania. So Eric, we were spoiled, right? We flew from Pittsburgh, flew into Chicago, and then flew to Fargo. And that cost us about $400 a piece round trip, which isn't bad. Round trip, $400 a piece, but that's not including, staying there. That's not including meals. That's just a flight.
Right. And as you said, we took Uber everywhere. That's not really realistic for 51 kids to Uber to the Fargo Dome and back each day.
Yeah. Right. Obviously there's a whole lot more that goes into that. So you're in a bus from, wherever the camp is to Fargo. So that's a long time in a bus, right? Maybe some kids.
It is. I took a bus trip. I was on a team that wrestled in Florida, and we took a bus down there. And yeah, it sucked being on a bus for that long, but it's a bonding experience too with the team.
Listen, I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just telling you what I was told. Okay. The price for low quality gear. So I guess the gear's not the best, and maybe the price is a little high. Being forced to pay for the team camp. So, and we went up and we've been at the camps for the last couple of years now. We went up to Clarion. I thought the camp was great. I loved the camp. I would have, even if I didn't go to wrestle in Fargo, I'd still like to go to that camp. It's a really, talk about the amount of talent in a room, coaching wise. It's incredible. I think the camp's a great thing, but I understand how some people say, well, I'm already training with a club team somewhere else. Why do I have to go to the camp, with the team? Because as of right now, you're kind of required to go to the team camp prior to Fargo.
Yeah, and there are some interesting debates that were on the Facebook page because some people said that, and then the response was, well, if you don't go to the camp, how are you going to be coached? We have these coaches here, these Division I coaches that are on staff. They're going to be in your corner at Fargo. It's pretty tough for them to really coach you if they haven't seen you wrestle at all. So the camp is twofold. You're getting that exposure to those coaches. You're getting to know them both for camp, and then it's also a great way for kids to get noticed by these Division I coaches because they're getting to know you. They're getting to see you in the room. They're getting to interact with you. So I can definitely see the positives of the camp. It's not an easy situation to answer any of these things. So when you have 51 kids and their parents, you're going to have a lot of different opinions on how this should be run. Yeah,
I mean, that is obviously it's okay. So I'll put it this way. I'm a pretty even keeled person. I would consider myself reasonable. I don't sway to one side or the other. I'm not too extreme. And my analysis taken away from this is a few things. One is society today, kids complain a whole lot, right? And maybe parents tend to shelter the kids. And, I agree with you. I'm in the same boat as you are, Eric. I enjoyed the bus trips. I was hazed on bus trips, which was fun. That's fine. But I returned the favor years later, right? So bus trips to me were not an issue. I enjoyed being with my friends. I'm still best friends with guys that I wrestled with since I was 10 years old, right? So I'm okay with that. I understand the money issues. The other things that come up are Pennsylvania wrestlers. I think we're sometimes see ourselves as entitled to, the national prominence that we are given. Where wrestlers say, I don't really have to go to Fargo to get noticed. I wrestle in Powerade. I wrestle in Flow Nationals. I wrestle in Beast of the East. My name's all over the place. What do I have to go to Fargo for to compete and spend $1,500 and give up a couple weeks of my life in the summer to go to Fargo? So I think a lot of wrestlers, Pennsylvania wrestlers in specific, tend to think that, maybe it's not necessarily, when you're talking about exposure, there's other ways to get national exposure.
There are, and you and I have been to those big tournaments. We've been to Super 32. We've been to Powerade. We've been to, to Escape the Rock. We've been to all these great things. You tell me, did you see more coaches in Fargo or at Super 32?
Fargo. There was, I'm pretty sure every single Division I college had a representative there on the floor. That's, you know what, Eric, that was the one part that really floored me was just seeing, just walking by, like, I just bumped into John Smith.
Everywhere you look, there's a prominent Division I coach.
Everywhere. And it's like the coaches of the teams. Look at Illinois. They had some of the best coaches there were out there, and you just look like Andrew Howe, Storniola. There was just so many different guys, coaches there on a national level that it was just like, man, obviously this is pretty important, right? But I get it. I get it that some of these wrestlers don't necessarily need that exposure if they feel like they're already getting it. I don't know. But I can't see. So going back to my original statement of what I take away from this is, one, there's obviously an issue with the PAWF. Whether people want to admit it or not, something is not quite right. I don't know. Now, people are going to debate on the significance of that issue, whether it's minor or it's major. I'm not the one to say. I've never really been involved in the PAWF. I just report on, some wrestling stuff. I can't say what's, I can only report on what people are saying. But I think overall, clearly there are some issues that need to be addressed within the PAWF and its leadership.
Well, and I think number one among those is what was on the Twitter poll: cost. I mean, $1,200 is an expensive. Wrestling is a blue collar sport. There are a lot of kids that come from hardworking blue collar families. That $1,200 is a lot of money.
That's a lot of money for a lot of different people. And if you look at it, Eric, so here's my question, and I always come back to is what is Illinois doing a little bit different? And the one thing I can tell you is organized fundraising. And that's something that maybe we haven't seen a whole lot. So I know some wrestlers individually that they did fundraising on their own to earn their way to Fargo. Josh Stillings, who we're going to talk to, he put on a few clinics and raised some money. But as a whole, and here's another thing. After the state tournament, the PIAA state tournament, National High School Coaches Association, they hand out packets to all the state medalists telling them, hey, you should come down and compete at Virginia Beach. Why is it that the PAWF doesn't do the same thing and say, hey, here's a list of all the regional or local qualifiers for the state tournament in freestyle and Greco? You should probably come to one of these so we can have you competing there. So that to me is sort of in an area of improvement. Is getting that name out there a little bit more and getting the excitement around it, because I can tell you Virginia Beach has gotten bigger. I think over the last 5 years for Pennsylvania than it has in years prior. So if you look at overall, I think price is, and it's never going to be $5. Unfortunately, right. It's not. I mean, especially. I mean, I don't think you can fly. I don't think you can fly to Fargo with a team of the caliber. I just don't think you can.
No, you're looking at
looking at a bus.
You've got over 100 kids.
Now, if they move it, if Fargo moves to.
Which is up for debate.
Yeah, sure.
And Louisville's one that, that would be a much shorter ride for
Dallas. I've heard Dallas.
That would still be a very long ride.
Yeah.
You're going to have to fly to Dallas.
Louisville, though, it's a much shorter trip. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the price, we're never going to get down to a price where it's like, oh, yeah, we can all afford that, right? But if we did a better job organizationally, if we did a better job as leaders and people who support wrestling to go out and do some crowdfunding, do some organizational fundraising, to minimize the cost of for some of these guys who just say, hey, I really want to compete there, I just can't do the price, right? So that shouldn't. I don't think the price should stop wrestlers from going. The guys who said, I just want to enjoy my summer, have at it. I understand. I was in your shoes. That's cool with me. But to stop a kid from going to Fargo and competing in such a tournament that is so beneficial, as we've seen, we've got to do a better job of that.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And we'll work, whatever we can do to promote these possibilities, to come up with ideas. We obviously love Pennsylvania wrestling and want to do anything we can to support it. So if there's any way that we can pitch in and get the word out there about something that'll help with the costs and help bring those down so that we can get our best wrestlers to Fargo, I think we're all for it.
We will, unfortunately, we'll put off responsibilities in life to help, just ask my soon-to-be fiance. I mean, sometimes I put wrestling before everything, and this is another example of where, and I've said this on air to many different people, is, I will volunteer my time as much as I can to help grow wrestling in Pennsylvania, and that includes freestyle and Greco and women's wrestling. So on behalf of PA Power Wrestling, we are willing and able to do whatever we can. Just pick up the phone. It's our number's on the site. You can email me, to help out in any way we can, because I don't like losing to Illinois. I don't like seeing those numbers where it's not like we're competing. I mean, let's be honest. We won it last year, and that's all good and dandy. But let's look at the last 10 years. And then you also look at those 10 years, where did we finish? Were we top 10? Were we top 5? A lot of those years we weren't even top 5. We were top 10. So, Illinois is not the only team that we're having trouble defeating. There's a lot of other teams out there, and I don't like that.
No, I don't see any reason that we should ever not be top 5.
So, I mean, overall, there's definitely some things, and I think, and if we just keep on, and I will say this, and I'll be explicitly clear about this, is if we just continue to do things business as usual, this trend is going to continue. Unfortunately, we're going to hang around. We're going to be on the outskirts, and we're going to be, we'll be competing, but we're never going to, in my opinion, for whatever it's worth, we're never going to reach that pinnacle that we did. Maybe we're in the 80s and the 90s when we talked about Teague Moore. Listen to our podcast and have him tell you some stories about Fargo. But we're never going to be or compete with Illinois if we continue to do things just the way they are. It's just not going to happen. There's some off-color remarks where people would say about, and I'm not going to repeat them, but there has been some people that said, well, it's a good old boy system. There's a lot of politics involved, and I get that. That's life. That's just the way the society is. But in order for us to really take a step forward, it's sometimes you got to look in the mirror and say, what, if you're not asking yourself every day, what can we do better? I mean, that's what we do, Eric. I mean, how many times do you and I just spitball and bounce ideas off each other and you're like, hey, what do you think about this? I mean, every day I wake up and I think about something to help improve PA Power Wrestling. I think that's really the direction that the PAWF needs to go if we're going to continue to showcase our best wrestlers.
Well, and, from the Facebook posts, there was a PAWF representative there, Raleigh Stillings, and she said, hey, look, I'm taking all this down. I'm presenting it to the PAWF. So I hope they take this stuff under advisement and they look at it and they say, yes, what can we learn from this? How can we get better? Exactly what you're saying, Jeff. Well, and I hope that they do take it seriously.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I will clarify, Eric, Raleigh is not. She's not a part of the PAWF.
She's a volunteer. You're right.
She's a volunteer.
You're right.
She's not.
I apologize for that.
She's not on the board of directors.
But she does work with them, and she said she is going to take it to them.
Correct. Right. If you can go on the PAWF website and you can look at their board of directors. There's email addresses. There's phone numbers. If you have questions or you have concerns, I'm sure Van and Joe they're more than willing to hear you out in a professional way. I don't think anyone wants to listen to some. I'm not going to go into it, but regardless, so we look at it and we say, what can what is Illinois doing that's so much different than us? And that's something I try to wrap my brain around. And it's sheer numbers, right? They're able to get guys there. There's a way to get to Fargo to compete in this. It's a little bit more difficult and complex than some other tournaments. There's 7 different regional tournaments throughout the nation. The one that Pennsylvania wrestlers go to is the Eastern Regional. It's Northeast Regionals, I'm sorry, and that's out of East Stroudsburg University, and that's where most of our wrestlers will qualify at. And then the state can also take an additional top 4 place winners top 4 from the regions, and top 8 place winners from the national championships automatically qualify for the event. So, you can compete in your state tournament as well. The state has a number of maximum entries they can do, but then you can add on to that. So you can have your guys competing in the regionals. You can have just returning All-Americans that don't have to compete in the state tournament. So if you have a guy who's a returning All-American competing in a state tournament, you're essentially bouncing someone else out because you're already qualified for it. But if a guy finishes top 4 in the state tournament, he can go. Does that sort of make sense, Eric?
Yeah, it's as you said, it's a bit of a confusing process.
Yeah, it's definitely confusing. It's
but kids will figure it out if they want to go. It's just a matter of getting that interest there and making sure that it becomes a priority.
Agree with you, Eric. And so let's put that to bed. Let's hit us up on Twitter at PA Power Wrestle if you have any comments, concerns about that. The Fargo situation, and not the situation, but just, the state of the union, if you will, of Pennsylvania freestyle, Greco-Roman, and women's wrestling. Because I think women's wrestling is one area, like we said, we lack on all fronts, so we need to do a little bit better job of that. And I will give a shout out to Cassie Farrell, who's the women's coach out there with Chris Atkinson, and I think Cassie's just done a great job, and I've only heard tremendous things coming from her from many different people. So I my hats off to her. Let's bring on a guest who has some experience in this, and that's going to be John Strittmatter from the Young Guns Wrestling Club, also a UPJ. He was a national champion there. Just to pick his brain a little bit.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you taking the time out of your week to get on the phone with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to talking to you boys.
What a week you guys have had with Young Guns. The first riding for the fall camp, and a lineup of Tom Brands, Bo Nickel, AJ Shop, Ben Askern, Vincenzo Joseph, Jared Freyer. I mean, wow, what a week for you guys.
Yeah, it's been great. Great turnout. We had a lot of kids there. The numbers were real high. And, every time we have these guys in, it's just a great opportunity for the kids to learn. It's a great opportunity for us to learn as well. So I feel like a camper myself.
Well, and this was at Johnstown this week. Where are you next week?
We're at Franklin Regional. Regional next week.
And talk about the
coaches coming in.
Yeah, talk about the guys you have coming in there.
Right. So we got a lot of different guys coming in next week. Some of the guys who wrestled in Young Guns, guys like Jason Dolph, Nico Megaludis, Michael Kemmer. We have John Smith coming in. He comes in every year, does a great job. For the first time, we have a guy who really has an extensive background in Greco-Roman. So we have Dennis Hall coming in, and we're super excited to kind of see some different techniques from the Greco-Roman aspect. We have a guy that we've heard amazing things about from Ohio State, Tervel DeLagnaff, coming in. We also have Wrestling Mindset. We're a big believer in building the mind as well. So Wrestling Mindset's coming in. I don't have the list in front of me. Jerry does all of that, but those are the guys off the top of my head. There's amazing guys coming in.
Yeah, just incredible what you guys have been able to do, and the guys that you've been able to bring in this spring and summer to Western Pennsylvania and give these kids an opportunity to learn from the very best in the sport. So
absolutely, it's an exciting time for kids. I mean, in Western PA, I mean, there's just so many good guys coming in, and we're hoping by surrounding our kids with really good people. Not only do they have great credentials, but they're good people. They're good human beings. They're good fathers. They're just good people, and kind of teaching the kids the techniques, but also the morals too.
Yeah, and you guys do a great job with that. And I know you were looking to share some of that information out in Fargo as you were coaching out there. What were your thoughts as one of the coaches out there on Team Pennsylvania's performance?
Right. We were. We have a great group of people that help out. I'm excited. The college coaches who come and help out, I mean, it's really impressive. It's been awesome getting to know those guys on a personal basis. There's so many people behind the scenes that do an excellent job, and it's a volunteer thing, and they put in so many hours that it's really neat to be a part of it. It's such a big thing to pull off. So it's really enjoyable to be on the staff with everyone, trying to do our part to help Pennsylvania. I think we got top maybe 5th this year, would seem to be where we were at, 4th, 5th in Cadets Juniors. So I know we've already gotten a lot of there's already been a lot of communication with the coaches and the individuals at the top of the PAWF, Van Plokus, Joe Stabilito, Rolly Stillings, about what we can do going forward to make PA the top state out there at Fargo.
And John, it's funny because we've spent a lot of time, Eric and I, talking about that, because that was our first trip out to cover Fargo. We both said we wish we would have wrestled in it, but we look at a team like Illinois and how dominant they have been over the last 10 years. I mean, we just threw out some stats from a little bit ago about how just purely dominant they are. And as you know, we posed a question on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, of asking why kids weren't necessarily going to Fargo, some of our top kids, right? And the results were somewhat, I don't know if they were surprising or to be expected, but money was a big factor. Time away from home and enjoying your summer was one, and maybe the lack thereof of interest in freestyle. So, in your opinion, having someone that's been around freestyle and for a very long time, especially with Fargo, what, in your opinion, what do we need to see happen in order for us to knock off Illinois?
Right. So, the first thing is what you're doing is the first step, right? We're collecting data. We're trying to find out what are the reasons kids aren't going. So, and then I think there's a lot of great wrestling people, great wrestling minds in Pennsylvania, and no one's. I don't want to see it where it's a debate where people are pointing fingers. Let's all get together. Let's try to get PA back on top. Let's brainstorm. Let's get data. What can we do to fix it? So, it's easy to point fingers, but the people at the top, they put in a lot of volunteer hours, and it's hard. And so it can be tough. It can be very challenging. But I think if we all work together, we can absolutely do it. I think Illinois, they have a very good systematic approach where they get kids involved at a young level, that schoolboy age level. So, I think it's got to be our first step is we got to target and almost working with the Junior Olympic State tournament. There's so much talent in that tournament, the JO State tournament, that I think we got to start really promoting it at that age. Get our best kids on the schoolboy team, and then we want to have a high retention, getting those kids to have a great experience, finding out what they need to have a great experience, and that's why getting the data that you are, I think, is important. And then we want to get a high retention rate, and we're going to try to get the kids who are on the schoolboy team. Hopefully, that there's a lot of talent there, and we transition them to the cadet team, get them a lot of talent there, and we transition them to the junior team. So I know it sounds a little, it sounds easy, but there's going to be a lot of work that goes into it. And like I said, Jody and I, we want to just do our parts with the young guns and making sure we get our top kids there.
It's interesting that you brought up like schoolboy and going from a young age. And if you look at a team like Illinois, they didn't just wake up and start wrestling really well at cadets. Their schoolboy national team is always one of the best ones in the nation. So I think you bring up a good point of, at the PJW tournament, look at how many guys do well there and then go on to do great things in high school. So, we should be going at them a little bit earlier on to get them interested in the freestyle, as opposed to just focusing. Because, in your opinion, do you feel like, Pennsylvania, we're more folk style driven, I guess you could say?
Right. I would agree with that. I think our state tournament is so challenging that when you make it through that state tournament in high school, and you're going through wars, right? You're going through wars, and you have some of the top ranked guys in the country wrestling each other. I think there can be, like, once you go through those wars, I think you definitely see some kids that just need that mental break. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it, but the kids who go through those wars, it's tough to be a Pennsylvania State champion. It's a little different than maybe some other states where that's just part of the process, and then you're going to Fargo, you try to be a national champion to get on the national map. Well, Pennsylvania, you win a state title, you're on the map. You people are looking at you, and I think what I'd like to see happen is I'd like to see it where we do that. You win your state titles, but you're also looking to win the Fargo tournament. You and Eric were both out there. You see how prestigious it is. You see all the college coaches out there, and you see the talent of the athletes, and you also see the talent of the coaches out there. I mean, you're coaching against Olympic champions like Brandon Paulson, national champions Jared Lawrence, and Kyler Sanderson. I mean, you see some great people out there that you're coaching against, and it's such a challenge to do well that I believe we can do well, but it's going to take all of our talent.
Yeah, and I think that's another good point of, instead of pointing fingers at each other and saying, I mean, there's enough people in Pennsylvania willing to sacrifice and volunteer. And, I meant Eric and I both mentioned it. And that was part of the reason why we went to Fargo. Pennsylvania wrestlers deserve the best coverage. And we took time out of our 9-to-5 jobs to go out and cover an event because it's that important. And, I think there's enough people in the state of Pennsylvania, if we just get on the same page and say, this is what we can do to prove it. And, I think you bring up a good point. Is just making sure everyone's, has a seat at the table and really just hashing out instead of, why aren't we doing this? It's this person's to blame, that person's to blame.
Right. And we have so many great high school coaches in the state. We have so many great people, like I said, like you and Eric. I think when you look at Illinois, there's so many people involved in that, right? And they're all kind of working in the same direction. So I think what we need to do is, we have awesome people in our state. Let's get the high school coaches involved. Let's everyone take pride in getting PA. I mean, we have the talent. We have the talent in the wrestlers. We have the talent in the high school coaches. Everything, right? Everything's in place. I think if we all kind of work in unison, PA is it's almost like a sleeping giant here where, everyone gets working on the same goal. I mean, look out, man, look out.
And John, you and I talked a little bit out there. You came up with some ideas. You're looking to do some fundraising and kind of help out like Illinois does, where they sell raffle tickets, something like that. Do you have any ideas as far as what we can do to make it easier financially on kids and their families? Right. I mean, that's something that I think we're all, like I said, the coaches and the PAWF, we're all kind of brainstorming at that right now. I know they put out, Joe Stabolito put out a Google Docs right now for people to share ideas, right? So I think things are going to come in. I know Jody and I, we don't want to overstep our boundaries. We want to do anything that they need us to do to help out. But, we're looking at, it starts with our club and getting kids excited and getting kids fired up, getting the families fired up about it. And there's a lot of people who help us out. You were in seeing the Bassett brothers, and Bill Bassett does an amazing job, and he is a big voice in the young guns room. And he there's a lot of individuals who really respect what he's doing within young guns, and so guys like that, and Larry Holman and Brian Capusta and Mike Diber. There's a lot of guys that we see that we're getting fired up and excited about it, and they're putting the message out. So within our own club, that's kind of what we're doing, is getting people excited, brainstorming, and then trying to make sure we whatever PAWF does, that we're looking to help them out as well. Yeah, and anything we can do, to help out, just get the word out about stuff. If there's anything that, in your discussions with the PAWF that they have that we can help get the word out and do a better job of it, we're, obviously behind the effort, and we'll do anything we can to help out Pennsylvania wrestling.
Absolutely, guys. I think that's awesome. I think what you're doing right now, just getting the message out, getting people this, getting that thing. Let's get fired up. Let's help out, and let's not point fingers. Let's work together. I think that's the big message we gotta do. And we're like I said, we're in the process of brainstorming right now. So all feedback's great. Anything we can do to learn and improve is always something that's going to help us out.
And John, Eric and I said, I mean, being obviously Pennsylvania guys, Pennsylvania wrestlers, I mean, we took it a little personally when Illinois just dominates the field, and they, I love seeing, the sport of wrestling grow and overall, but obviously we want to see Pennsylvania do very well. And, these last couple of years, Illinois, they got it figured out, right? And but it's nice because
they really do.
They have it figured out, but it sets the sights, if you will, to say, okay, now the bar's been set by Illinois. What can we do to help inch a little bit closer to that? And obviously, it's not going to happen overnight, but if we can start now and like you said, at the PJW level, handing out literature on the PAWF and, getting, I think one of the biggest things that especially Eric and I can do is help in communication and saying, these are where your regional tournaments are. These are some of the, the basics, because I know growing up in, wrestling, there wasn't a whole lot of, I guess you would say, information on how to really get involved in freestyle. It was just word of mouth. So, getting to those kids early on at the PJWs, seeing, guys that are going to make noise on the high school level and getting them involved in freestyle at those schoolboy, those novice and bantam levels.
Right, absolutely. I guess I have a question for you and Eric. So it was your first time out to Fargo. I always consider it the Rose Bowl of wrestling, right? It's so prestigious. But I guess what were your thoughts on the atmosphere, the high-level wrestling, seeing all the coaches, the high-level coaches from our states? What were some of your impressions?
We were just gushing over it earlier in the podcast. For me, it was so cool because just being on the floor and every time you turn around, you're running into a coach. I mean, just, huge names in the sport. And it was just so awesome to see all those people there and really understand what Fargo is all about.
Yeah, and John, I'll reiterate that. I mean, you just couldn't walk anywhere without bumping into a Division I college coach or a former Olympic, a medalist, or just, I mean, the biggest names in wrestling were there, and I think that shows, for a reason they're there. Obviously they consider this a very high caliber event, and having our first time out there, we were very, very excited, as Eric said, gushing over it, and just the matchups. I mean, talk about some high quality wrestling. I mean, that Sammy Sasso, Anthony Artolona match was just insane, and that was just one of many. There was a ton of matches that that was the highlight for us in a certain sense. But Sammy going at it with Justin McCoy, those two just left it all on the mat, and that was a 5th place match, and that was probably one of the more exciting matches I watched, just because you could tell they just both had a lot of respect for each other, and they left it all on the mat. And I told that to both of them as they walked off. I said, you guys just put on a heck of a show. I appreciate you, because, you're not going to, that's a guy that you've been rolling around with for last week, you're just going at it, it's like some of those battles in the rooms that no one else sees, but the coaches and the guys, and, how many, of those guys that we see just go at it in the room. And it was like that on the mat all the time. So I would just echo what Eric said. It was overwhelming just to see such high quality wrestlers go at it and perform well.
Right. And if you're a parent out and you have young kids who are high level wrestlers, I mean, I guess the best thing you could say about it is you have some of the best wrestlers in the history of the United States. Their own sons have went through that process, right? I mean, John Smith, you saw JoJo Smith coming up through that system. Terry Brandon's son Nelson, he's come up through that system. So there's countless others, but that's the best thing you can say about it is the best guys in the world, their own sons are going through that, and they're surrounding themselves with the best coaches in the world, in the United States. And so I think parents were on the fence about it. Once they got and see the coaches that are involved in helping their sons and the coaches that will be exposed to, I think that it'll be a no doubter once they get involved with the program.
Now, and John, let me ask you this, because in today's day and age, it's a lot different in the sense that there's so many national level events. I mean, I 100% believe that there's no other tournament, not after seeing Fargo, that has as many Division I college coaches there. But with some other tournaments, you got Flow Nationals, Disney Duels, Virginia Beach, Super 32. Guys are just, there's so many different national stages, national levels to really highlight yourself and put a name out there. and that's all good. But when we talk about freestyle, Olympic style wrestling, do you feel like this is where Fargo, Super 32, it's a great thing to win for folk style, but what are we doing to benefit ourselves in the freestyle sense?
Right, absolutely. And the terms you mentioned are all outstanding. We go to all of them, right? We're represented at all of them, and we're getting great competition at all of them. I think what the difference of freestyle is, and what I want to do with my own sons coming up, is that I want to get them plugged into USA Wrestling. When they start identifying the best athletes in the United States, it pretty much seems like a schoolboy age level when the schoolboy duels are out there. They start, you have to talk to Bill Zadek and whatnot, but it seems like they identify these kids at the schoolboy age, definitely at the cadet age. And then some of these kids they're getting opportunities to go out to the Olympic Training Center. I know this from watch Spencer Lee's development and Gavin Teasdale and Trevor Clearing and some of our studs who went through that. So now you're getting opportunities to go out to the Olympic Training Center for weeks during the summer, and you're getting plugged into USA Wrestling. You're around the best coaches in the world. You're getting help with your technique, and you're really developing. And so the other terms are great. I have nothing but great things to say about them. But when you're plugged into USA Wrestling, you're really taking a step forward to your development and really kind of going down that path of what it means to be one of the great wrestlers in the United States.
That's a great point, John. That's something that I don't think that we had really thought about before, is getting them into that and getting them out to Colorado and working with USA Wrestling and the benefits that there are down the road for it.
Right, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of been our thing. And like I said, I mean, Spencer was one of our first guys to kind of go down that path. And we've had some guys from our club do that, and it's been a really neat experience. I mean, they've made a lot of great, friendships with guys all over the country, and it's been nothing but a great experience for them. And the things they've learned, they've come back to show us, and it's been exciting for us to learn as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you bring that up, because it's like, Spencer Lee won Super 32. He beat Nick Soriano. That was all good, but I think him going to the World Tournament and wrestling in the World Championships was a little bit more satisfying for him. And just look at who the people he's been exposed to in such a young career. I mean, he's a junior age. Right. He could have been in Fargo. He's a junior age wrestler, but look at all the things that he was able to do and accomplish and be around. I mean, he was able to go to the Olympics, like a guy like Mark Hall. I mean, Mark Hall is the same way.
Right.
I mean, they're just talk about surrounding yourself, being at the OTC, feeling comfortable there. I think that just shows that clearly that path of progression, it starts in that cadet and that schoolboy level, and it flourishes from there.
Right. And if a kid has a dream to truly be an Olympic champion, I know a lot of kids say that, I want to be an Olympic champion. I mean, it really starts early, right? It starts early. You look at other sports, gymnastics. I was talking to Brandon Paulson in Fargo. His daughter is world level. I mean, she's 15 years old, and she's 15 years old, and she's been plugged into the USA system for years now. And now she's kind of getting to the point where she's ready to and hopefully make the Olympic team and world teams.
Wow!
But she's been plugged into that USA system for a while, and that's how it is for wrestling. If you're truly serious about being an Olympic champion and going down that path, it does start at a fairly early age and getting exposed to the USA system and getting plugged into and wrestling the world tournaments and training out of Colorado Springs. And like you said, Mark Hall's a great example.
Well, John, and I think what you're doing, obviously, you and Jody and everybody that's involved in Young Guns, what you guys are doing for the sport of wrestling and just the development of young men across the board. It's great. And I think, you guys get a lot of credit, and it's very well deserved. And we always enjoy having you and Jody and, the rest of the gang on to talk about some of these things. And we really appreciate you having the time to come out and talk to us, especially during such a busy week. You just finished up with a great camp, and you got another one coming up at Franklin Regional. So, again, as Eric said, if there's anything we can do to help, and please pass this along to those involved at PWF, but if there's anything that we can do at PA Power Wrestling to help, because ultimately we all have the same goal, and that is to grow wrestling, specifically in the Keystone State, and develop young wrestlers into men. So, and it goes for women as well. We said that earlier, that our women wrestler, we feel like we don't give them enough credit, and we'd like to see all aspects of wrestling grow. So if there's anything we can do, we absolutely would like to do that. So appreciate you taking the time out, John.
I can't say enough. I can't say enough great things about you two. You're changing the game in Pennsylvania, man. You're getting the message out. You're getting the word out, and because of you guys, good things are going to be going on down the road here.
Thanks, John.
All right, John. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks again.
All right. See you. Bye.
Just again, thanks a lot to John Strittmatter. I mean, we covered a whole lot of things there with him and going over some of the things, and I think he raises so many good points about getting to those guys early and often, especially at the schoolboy level. So I think that was great insight, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that having read all the Facebook comments and the Twitter things and all that we'd kind of gone over most of the points, but he really brought up a couple things that I hadn't even thought of, like, just getting to them at that younger level, that it's not enough to say, hey, you're a PIAA champ as a sophomore, why aren't you in Fargo? It should be built in, and that they're already thinking, hey, I want to be out there as a cadet. I want to be winning a national title then, and building on it.
Well, even going out to the Olympic Training Center. I mean, obviously not everyone's going to be able to go out there, but setting your goals to really go that way. And like you said, I think he's raising some good points. I think it's promising to hear him say that there's a Google Docs going around sharing ideas and bouncing around ideas, because that's what it obviously. And we said this earlier in the podcast, but it's never going to change if we just continue doing business as usual. So I hope that those in charge of PAWF will really take a look at this and see what we can do to really improve it. And if there's anything we can do, we'd obviously like to help. Speaking of Fargo and some of those different things, Josh Stillings from Pennridge comes in as the number 10th ranked senior on the top 300 recruits of the class of 2018. He's going to join us here. He's going to give us his top 4 schools that he's narrowed down to for who he's going to continue his academic and wrestling careers at. So really excited to have Josh Stillings on. Joining us now is Josh Stillings, PIAA state runner-up from a year ago. And Josh comes in as the number 10 ranked recruit on the class of 2018. So clearly we're very interested to see where Josh would like to go. Josh, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
So, Josh, we just saw you. We just spent a lot of time with you in Fargo. We saw you up at the Clarion camp. We talked to you a little bit up there about the college, choices and just going through that decision. Do you just want to walk us through a little bit what your recruiting's been like since the summer started?
Yeah, it's been a really fun and exciting experience for me and my family. We've had a great time with it, and it's a great time for me and my family. I'm excited.
Josh, you were able to compete out in Fargo. That was your first time wrestling up in juniors. What was it like wrestling some of those maybe a little bit older guys, and how did you feel Fargo went?
They were definitely a lot stronger and more mature, and it was a lot tougher than cadets, extremely tougher than cadets. So it was a good experience, but I feel like I should have done a lot better, and I didn't perform to my best, definitely.
So you thought maybe you could have done a little bit better, but you felt like it was a good experience. I mean, obviously, I joked on the last podcast, you've been to Fargo 18 times, so it's I'm sure you in your mind are saying it was obviously a successful trip because you got to figure out what maybe you need to work on and some things like that. Is that true?
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot of what I need to work on and get stronger in the gym and stuff like that.
Well, if you get any stronger, Josh, you may end up projecting to be a 197 pounder in college. What do you plan on wrestling next year, possibly for your senior season? I mean, you started at what your freshman year? You were 132, is that right?
Yeah, I was 132 freshman year. This year I'm planning on starting at 70, but hopefully I'm going to wrestle 82.
Wow. Okay, that's great. So you never really were a big weight cutter, were you? You never had to cut a whole lot of weight in your 3 years.
Yeah, the most I ever cut was probably 2 pounds for states last year.
That's awesome. I mean, we're seeing more and more kids sort of take that route where, you're more interested in getting bigger and stronger. The skill set's already down, maybe a little bit fine tuning, but we're seeing more and more kids these days, instead of sucking down 20, 30 pounds just to, try to maybe win a state title a certain weight. You're just going at it with some of the best guys in the state, because that's the way you are. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I feel like when you're cutting weight, you're not focusing on your technique. You're not learning. So, and I like to enjoy the sport. It is a sport. You're supposed to have fun. So I feel like go ahead.
You're saying instead of rolling around at practice with a hoodie, a couple under shirts and sweatpants, instead of doing that, you want to actually be in a shirt and t-shirt and actually be comfortable learning? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy, right? It's a crazy thought to think that that's the way it is. How many times do you see that where, kids, it's a day before a match or a dual meet and you're, the guy in there. I was never that person, by the way. But yes, sometimes you see people that they're more focused on the weight and not the, getting better. So I think that's really cool. In terms of, so it's now almost the end of July. So what's it been like with the recruiting aspect, like college coaches visiting you? Have you had a lot of, coaches stop by and, try to, win you over?
Yeah, I've had quite a bit of coaches come by, and some interesting, some not. And it's just been, I don't know, it's exciting, and I'm happy to be in this situation.
I mean, I'm sure we asked you this the last time we had you on, but I'm sure it's pretty humbling to have some top name coaches and programs come, knock on your door and say, they wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, I've met a lot of cool people through the process. Yep.
Cool. Awesome. So you've actually been able to narrow it down to 4 schools in that process. So can you take us through each school and maybe a little bit about them and maybe about the coach? What is it that, is attractive to you?
Yeah. All right. So my first school is Drexel. I've really liked Azevedo and Jeva, and like how they've treated me and all the stuff that's like, and I like the academic part of the school with the co-op program, and I don't know, it's just a good environment, I think. Okay, so that's one. And then the next school would be Campbell, and it's really cool talking to Colat and Sentes and a bunch of the coaches down there who have done really well in their wrestling careers. I like Old Dominion would be another school, and that's just a beautiful campus of a school, and I really like Coach Dixon, who I've been talking to quite a bit. And my last school would be American, and I really like Teague Moore. He's a cool guy to talk to, and definitely the academics down there is great. So,
well, that's congratulations on such remarkable sort of academics and wrestling that in all 4 of those schools. It's just pretty incredible to hear you say all those names, and guys like Kerry Colat and Teague Moore. Those are legends in the sport of wrestling, not only in Pennsylvania but the nation. So can you talk a little bit about the fact, Teague was one of the coaches on the PA team this year. I'm sure you spent a good bit of time with him. Did that help maybe that comfortability wise with him, and even with Jeva too, because Josh was there as well.
Yeah, it was definitely good to have the coaches there to get to know him better and get more comfortable with him and talk to him more about college.
Now, Josh, we hear a lot of people talk about distance wise, right? And you said Drexel which is probably I would say the closest, right? To you. Do you feel like distance? I know some kids or teenagers are a little bit more reluctant to go a little bit further away. Did that ever play? Is that playing into a factor in your decision at all?
I don't think so, but because I've been traveling like my whole entire life, I'm not always home, so I feel like going far away isn't that big of a deal. But of course, it would be nice to come home, do my laundry every once in a while, and see my parents. So, being close to home is a little bit of a factor, but not that big.
I mean, I should have known. I'm talking to a guy who basically has an address, a billing address in Fargo. You've been there so much, and that's really cool. Well, again, Josh, we really appreciate it, and best of luck to you and deciding which school it is that you're gonna continue your wrestling and academic careers at. And I know whoever gets one of those 4 schools ever one lands you, they're in for a good one. So that's pretty cool. And again, we appreciate you talking to us on the PA Power podcast about where you're going to end up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks, Josh. Well, Josh Stillings has got to be pretty happy with those 4 schools that he's narrowed it down to: Old Dominion, Campbell, American, Drexel, just all phenomenal institutions, both academically and athletically. With wrestling, guys like Kerry Colat and Teague Moore, not too shabby to have those guys in your corner if you're looking to be an impact wrestler.
No, definitely not. Great coaches, and they're going to be getting a great young man, whichever school ends up getting Josh's commitment. You know him a lot better than I do, but I got to talk to him a little bit at the Fargo camp, and just seems like a great young man. Yeah,
he is. He absolutely is. Very mature. He's very well spoken, and he never likes to talk about himself. It's not. He never. Anytime I was ever interviewing him, it's not about him. It's he just is very humble. So very nice to see. So I would say, Eric, that we just not only did we kill it out in Fargo, I think we did a pretty good Fargo recap here, Eric.
I hope we did. And again, as we said, we're just looking to try to get Pennsylvania to the top of the mountain. We're not trying to bash anybody, criticize anybody that's working with PAWF and what they're doing. We want to help any way we can and just see Pennsylvania flourish like we know it can.
Absolutely, Eric, and that's what it's all about. And we appreciate you tuning into the PA Power podcast. Please, if you haven't already, take a gander over to our college podcast with Mason Beckman, a.k.a. Beck Diggity, and Tristan Warner, a.k.a. Warren Trins. They got some goofy names, Eric. We just, those young kids, we're just Jeff and Eric.
Yes, a little simpler.
But you got to listen to Mason Beckman and Tristan Moore, their college podcast. They just do a way better job than we do. So definitely tune into them. Follow us on Twitter at PA Power Wrestle. If you have any suggestions or comments or any topics you want us to discuss for our next podcast, hit us up on Twitter at PA Power Wrestle. Follow us on Facebook. Get us up on Smugmug. We actually have some pictures from Fargo. So if you wrestled in Fargo and you're looking for a picture of yourself, I was out there snapping a lot of photos. There weren't a lot of good ones, but there was enough to go around. So, if you shoot enough, you'll get a few good ones. So definitely check out Smugmug on PA Power Wrestling and tune in to PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs. Thanks for stopping by.